So the big question, can you use the older MechWarrior Dark Age miniatures in our modern Catalyst plastic era BattleTech? Let's take a look at some things. So my criteria for evaluation is there's low odds that Catalyst will produce it, because if Catalyst is going to make it, I'm going to want that miniature over these. It's got to be within my scale tolerance. Your mileage may vary here, but the ClickTech game was about 15 millimeter or thereabouts, and we know that BattleTech is 6 millimeter ish today. It's also got to be inexpensive and available. So on those three, Catalyst isn't going to make it. I can tolerate the scale difference, and it's affordable. That would make the list for something that I'd use, and I have a few that have met that criteria. All right, so let's go look at Mechs. Mechs, Catalyst is likely to produce them, and here in this shot, we've got kind of two polar opposites. There's a forestry mech at the back, which are really low odds that Catalyst will make that. Well, maybe they could. They'll probably throw us a bone at some point and make some Dark Age, true Dark Age mechs. But there's a Kodiak right there in the Wizkids line, and we already have one of those. So I think this misses on point one. It definitely misses on point two. I'll show you these, the mechs side by side here in a second. And most of these guys are $5 up to 20 or even over for the rare ones. So kind of misses on all points. Well, let's go look. All right, and in my hand is a Stinger from the MechWarrior Dark Ages line, still attached to its base. You can see how large that is. It's way bigger than a silver dollar there. You can see what it's like next to a HeroScape Hex. Also down on the ground here are some of the other light mechs. I can't remember what this is, some Dark Age wasp-like thing. I do have a forestry mech. I forgot that I did. Even in Dragon's Fury, I probably got it specifically just for that, because that's cool. Yeah, and here's another industrial mech of some sort. I believe this is another forestry or mining mech of some sort. Only it's been slightly weaponized here with some SRMs on it, I think. So yeah, that's what they look like. But of course, to give you any idea of scale, really got to have one of these hexes around, which is a good look. But how about we compare a Stinger to a Catalyst Stinger? So there you go. And I think you can start to see the problem here. And yeah, we're just way out of scale. And if Catalyst didn't do such a bang up job of making assaults, heavies, mediums, and lights look the part next to one another, this might not have bothered you, right? If a Stinger was standing shoulder to shoulder with a Timberwolf, that would be okay, but it's just not in our world. So that's why I don't think these miniatures are great for use in the game. Elementals next to them don't really tell you as much, right? Because, that can look representative and okay. But mechs next to mechs can't really do it. And then it gets even goofier if you imagine trying to put those on hexes next to them. Like, most of them won't even go, right? Like, cool, yay. Now we're BattleTeching. It just doesn't work for me. Yeah, if I haven't said, I will end up using these in maybe 15 millimeter sci-fi or even 28 mil as like robots of themselves. I think they're kind of cool. They're kind of cool for what they are. The other thing I would say too, if we go that Stinger to that Stinger, I mean, those guys, they're close. I'm sorry, slightly off camera there. They're close in style and feel because they're both Stingers. But I do think there is something in the art direction, and really coming across in the feet there, right? We have the very kind of classic lamb sort of feet action on the Catalyst Stinger versus we're flat-footed weirdo on the Dark Age one. There's just something in the art direction for Catalyst that is different and better. influenced by Harebrained Schemes, game, art, Scroggins, Sort of Light, all that amazingness that make these much more desirable sculpts in style too, I think. So style and scale, Catalyst just doesn't quite hold up for me. So I pass on all mechs. And yeah, they're also good for like crazy bits of terrain in your sci-fi games. If you can get, again, if you can get them cheap enough, there's a mech that's just falling apart because the glue gets old and is brittle. And so when you try and take them off their bases, you can also lose a foot or whatever, but that doesn't bother me none. For what I might use them in, like this thing in a 15mm Aliens game, like that looks the part for the loader, doesn't it? That's pretty cool. Of course, the loader's open chested, isn't it? But yeah. Anyhow, not for BattleTech. And as a final score, the mechs get the F. Kind of unsurprisingly, I think again they're only good as chopped up terrain pieces or rubble, things of that nature. I think they're great for, but putting them on a hex base, they will not fit and they will tower over everything else. Vehicles. So here you can see some shots of actually a Saxon APC in close relative scale shot to one another there. One on its oblong or elliptical base from ClickTech, and another shot of it mounted hovering over a hex base. They look pretty good there, right? So I think odds are low that Catalyst produces these. I think scale-wise, heavy caution, the smallest vehicles can kind of fit in a pinch. They're out of scale, but they mount up on a hex base okay. And they look the part to me. They're also $1 to $3. So awesome. In that scale caution, I'd say no to all air and VTOL. They're way too big. No to the out and outright tanks. I'll show you here. Yes, again, to those small recon transports. Let's go look at some of them. Starting with the bad for our vehicles here. Here's a full-blown tank. And you could see, like, there's just, from Dark Age, this Wizkids line, there's no way that, I mean, yeah, this thing's turret comes off, so this will be perfect. You're just way out of scale again. This is a hovercraft of some sort, too big. This is, I think, a medium-sized reconnaissance vehicle of some sort. In my mind, a little too big. Those these chain guns on the side, Gatling guns, whatever they are, just a little too large. And then there's this APC here, which is really cool. I wanted it to work, but it's, too long, too big. All right, so let's go look at where it does start to work, which is in the tiny stuff. All right, so here we've got a Shamash reconnaissance vehicle, which is a Funky Clan vehicle. And a Fox armored car. A weird antenna-y, radar-y dude back there. This is a Scimitar fighting vehicle. I can't remember what the other designations are there. I think these are LRMs supposed to be mounted on the back there. It's rocking a Spirits Cat logo. This is a Saxon APC that I've showed in the pictures there before. And a Tamerlane strike sled. I had it facing backwards there on the ground. So in all of these things, because they're so, on their little pill bases, they're so slight, they're only taking up, the center. It just so happens that they fill out the hex base, but they actually sit within it. So I think this one, the scimitar is probably going to look a little bit chunky next to Catalyst stuff, right? You can judge by the photos and artwork that they have here by the magic of editing. Let's do it. And, but because they're just they're in that ballpark, they're doing the right thing there, right? I think they work. I think this is supposed to be a single person vehicle, this Tamerlane strike sled. But you know what? It doesn't really matter a heck of a lot that could maybe be, it's a really large reconnaissance, fast recon strike sled, hit and run and go away and radio back where the bad guys are at, right? It still fits enough in the universe and on game, scaled next to Mechs and Infantry, that those work. So at least these 5 are good. There are a couple others which I've looked at, Giggins APC and one other. Ranger, I think. Yeah. Ranger and Giggins. So these guys are still on their pill bases. I'm a little afraid to remove them. Like the wheels are glued down. They're a little bit large, right? They won't mount on a hex base well. Would they be gameable though off hex? I think so. So if you really wanted to use those 2, you might be able to as well. I think for me, they're just a touch big in look. So I was hoping, because I'm like, oh, those are taking up the middle part of the bases. I'll give those a go. So I bought 2 of each in the hopes that they'd work and just find them to be a little bit big. But I think if you stick with these 5, I think those are doing it, right? Yeah. So vehicles are a mixed bag. You got to be careful what you gravitate towards. And I think, like I said, I would stay well away from the air assets and things of that nature. And full-blown tanks are just ridiculous next to, yeah. I can't remember. This is actually a well-known tank that I'm sure Catalyst actually may end up making. But yeah, that's just, I mean, this is like I don't know, it's like a condo on wheels. So vehicles, final grade.
Okay.
See, there are some passable vehicles here, and I'm going to plan to rebase them and use them. So are they like super game-changing and amazing? No, but they're fun to have as an addition to kind of my combined arms BattleTech game, and especially in Alpha Strike. They're just, they get melted away in a shot. So, it's fun. Infantry. There are very low odds that Catalyst makes all the varieties of infantry that were available in the MechWarrior Dark Age line. I just don't see it happening, right? The clan elementals and the inner sphere battle armor, I can see that their Catalyst is making those. Are they going to really extend out and build a lot? No, that's not where their game focus is. So on this point, I think it's a strong yes. It's a strong fit for me. The scale, it ain't great. Like, you can look there. That's a gnome battle armor next to elemental battle armor. That's way out of whack, right? Yeah. But the good news is they're dirt cheap. Sometimes they're less than $1 even, but $1 to $2 for a stand of infantry is totally within reason to find out there on the internet. Where the scale break is, really this one, if it's scale breaking to you, you gotta say no, yes to what's tolerable, and I think this is all to within taste of what's appealing to the individual, you know. Also, a note here, you're going to probably want to base in units of 4 and 5. It takes an extra stand of infantry to do that typically because normally they're based in 3s. You can see some there. That's actually inner sphere battle armor shrunken down into the bottom right-hand corner there. That is based in 2s. Sometimes they're based in singles as well, but most are based in 3s. Yeah, so let's take a look at these, and I've got a lot to say about kind of why I'm gravitating towards using them.
All right, this is going to be a slightly longer show and tell here because we've got a lot of units to look at. But let's just come out with the obvious. I've told you the scale is way off, and this is why it's way off. So here, this is the better one. Where is it? Yeah, all right. There is their version of Catalyst's. It's Catalyst's Elemental versus Dark Age's Inner Sphere Battle Armor. And if you know about your scales, you know that elementals are bigger than our inner sphere dudes. So this is where the main problem comes in. And you can see down here on the left side, I've got a set of models that I'll talk about that I think I'm not interested in using. But then a set of models that I'm interested in using, even despite the fact that when you put them like this, they are still not in good scale relation to one another. Whoop. Those guys were trying to take off. They got wings. But because it is so unlikely Catalyst will ever make these, and be really hard for them to make them to scale because they'd have to be smaller than their elemental brethren there. But these Kage battle armor, I like them because they're Draconis Combine representative, and they're down here on the gaming space. If you imagine, I've got 4 of them based on this hex, which they'll easily do. Like, that is going to look just fine as a game aid. The miniature will fill its role and not be too out of scale and game breaking for me. So yes, that hex there represents, with those guys on it, the Kage battle armor. And, okay, they're a little bit big, but if I make my buildings that have doors that big in them, and my terrain is scaled to this, then I don't think I have a problem. Like, these are not for me, getting the variants of the battle armor in just for the variety and the giggles of it outweigh the scale break factor for me. So now that's not going to be the case for everybody. And where you might make exceptions aren't the same spaces I'm making exceptions, right? Like the Oni battle armor here is ridiculously more out of scale, right? That does not look right at all. But again, for the flavor, I'm doing it. Unidine, these battle armor, I'm going to give these guys over to my Ghost Bears for the gigs. All for the giggles. Raiden battle armor, even more, I think, worse out of scale there. But they're in my to use group. And then this guy, the Kanazuchi, who is clearly out of scale there, but is he? Maybe he's just like a bigger battle armor. Okay, yeah, in BattleTech he's not, but it doesn't look awful, right? Like, that's believable. That I don't have to suspend disbelief there to think that those two things could be encountering one another. And it gets even better when you do this. I can believe it, right? So as kind of like this little proto mech, or almost, it's growing grand battle armor, it works for me. So I like it. And okay, I am going to break a little bit in that one of these guys will represent 3. I'll only mount them 1 to a base, but that's still going to be cool. All right. And now here's maybe something shameful to admit. These are Pathfinders, which I think are actually robotic, if I remember right from the lore. I'll have to look that up, but I think so. These guys are the smallest infantry I've come across from the Dark Age line. And here's what they look like standing next to elementals. And let me get them kind of in the same lineup there. Oops, sorry, that was rough. Okay. You know what I think they make a great makeshift of? Actual inner sphere battle armor, right? So that's what I might do, even though Catalyst's inner sphere battle armor is going to be way better. But I might, just for the heck of it, put 4 to a stand here and call this inner sphere battle armor and be done with it. I don't know. I'm probably not. I'm probably going to get the Catalyst ones because they're going to be way more beautiful. But, you know, with a little stripping work there and maybe a repaint, those might come out better. So yeah, those are the thoughts there. All right, now let me show you the true dogs. If you've looked at those and thought, oh man, that's awful, here we go. How about some Grey Death Legion battle armor or Grey Death battle armor? Yeah, anything, my rule of thumb is if you see it mounted 2 to a stand, it's not going to work for you. And if it's mounted 1 to a stand, like the Kanazuchi, that's going to be way out of there. And here's I really wanted the Fenrir battle armor to work. Again, kind of maybe in a proto-mech space, I suppose it could go, but I'm not going to use it because I know. I think that's the thing. If I don't know enough about the lore and I can forgive the scale and I really want the unit, then I'm taking it. But I know enough to know that that is just, and frankly, the sculpt is a little bit goofy and weird too. It's not the prettiest thing on the table. It would fit on a hex base. It could be run like that. Wouldn't have a problem. Here is Achilles? How do we say that? Yeah. Achilles battle armor. This guy fell off, so let's put him right next to an elemental. And you can see, like, what we got going on there. Yeah. And the other ones, which are always dirt cheap to get, are these shock troopers. They come mounted in a clump of 5 that are usually leaning over like this, but they're way too big for what they are. So yeah, I'd steer clear of shock troopers, anything mounted to 1, unless you're gonna be a weirdo like me and say, you know what, anything that was a Draconis Combine battle armor, I'm taking because I want it in my game. And again, just down on the table, representing that unit, you're totally fine. Scale-wise, you gotta make a little exception or have a little suspension of disbelief kind of action going on here. Here is a gun nest, and this gets really questionable to me because the gun is far too big. The people are kind of in the right area, but then the armor plating is, I don't know. Again, good representation on the table presence. Boom, there's my gun nest down. Imagine it mounted on a hex base and it would be fine, right? So I think the scale here is a bit harder because why? Because we're representing humans. And as soon as you do humanoid-like thing, you immediately have an understanding of what all scale around it's supposed to be. But, you throw a mech down here and a mech there and, you might not really care or notice that much for the representative factor. Now you put the elemental down there next to him, okay, it's going to get a little bit harder because you know in your heart of heart how big those guys are supposed to be, and they're supposed to be bigger than their inner sphere brothers. So yeah, that's why only maybe the Pathfinders that I found are close enough in scale to them to maybe be proxied as inner sphere battle armor.
And so my final grade for infantry is a B minus. Wow. Just again from the fact that game representation wise, I think they are great for that game aid of being infantry on the table.
Well, thanks for watching. Toss me a like or some comments. Let me know what you think is works in that line or maybe is out of bounds and breaking it for you. I'd be curious to know, and I'll see how I get along here on stripping these guys down, repainting them a little bit, rebasing them. I'll let you know how that goes here, hopefully in a video update sometime soon. All right, catch you later, gang. Bye.